3. Oh, this is going to play on Monday, by the way. 3, 2, 1. Well, we all know that the Obama administration hit the magic number of over 6 million people signed up for Obamacare. And he calls it Obamacare, so that's not a derogatory, it's not a pejorative to say that. Anyway, we have with us a fellow who follows this stuff very carefully. He's with the National Center for Public Policy Research. He's a senior fellow there. He's got his Ph.D., but elected to stay in this kind of work rather than university work, which was probably a smart move. Dr. David Hogberg, you've heard him on the show before. We have him back again as we start a new week here on The Newsmaker Show.
Next on News Talk, AM 1480 WLEA, The Newsmaker Show with Kevin Doran.
Dr. Hogberg, down in the nation's capital.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Did I get your titles all correct there, senior fellow and so forth?
Oh, absolutely, but feel free to call me David.
All right, Dave, I'll do that. David, all right. Listen, if I got a Ph.D., I've always said this, or if I made major in the Army, I would always be either doctor or major. Nobody would ever call me by my first name. But I appreciate your humility. All right, now here's the deal. There was a lot of favorable press coverage on Obamacare last week because they hit this magic number of 6 million. They actually went over it.
7.1 million.
Yeah, they got to 7.1. All happened in the last couple of minutes of the rollout. Now, sad to say, but all of the polls show, I haven't seen one that doesn't show this, that a majority of American people, not a plurality, but a majority of the American people no longer believe Barack Obama. So can we believe those numbers?
No, by and large, you really can't, and here's why. That 7.1 million number is only people who have actually signed up through the website. It does not break it down by people who've actually paid their first premium, and that's when an insurance company actually considers you to be enrolled. You've paid your premiums, and for obvious reason. The New York Times looked at this somewhat extensively and found at one point that 20% of the people on the exchanges had not paid their first premium. So if you do the math, 7.1 million less 20% would be closer to 5.6 million people enrolled. And it may be even less than that because I suspect this last minute, the people who made this last minute rush to sign up, if they're the type of people who are going to wait to the last minute, there are probably also a lot of people who are just going to, in the end, say, never mind, and not pay the premium. So, to the extent that last-minute rush may have an even higher number of people not paying their premiums, the number wouldn't even reach 5.5 million.
Now, what should the number have been? 5.5 million in a country of 3.5 million?
You mean 300?
350 million, yeah. Isn't that what it is?
311 million, something like
that.
Okay. Anyway, well, that kind of depends on what your goals were. But if you look at the Congressional Budget Office analysis, they said somewhere between 6 and 7 million people who were previously uninsured would get insurance on the exchanges. And, the Obama administration was happy to go along with that number. Well, we know that the vast majority of people who've gone onto the exchanges were previously covered. Many of them had insurance on the individual market, and they just went on to the exchanges because they could now get their coverage subsidized. In fact, the latest survey, I believe from the RAND Corporation, said that maybe 33% of those on the exchange were previously uninsured, which would be, about 2.4 million of that 7.1 million. But then other data has shown that people who were previously uninsured, maybe just over half, have actually paid their premium. Again, there's a lot of them who haven't paid their premium and so are technically not enrolled. So really the number of newly insureds on the exchange would be closer to 1 to maybe 1.5 million, which is far from that 6 to 7 million reduction in the uninsured that the exchanges were supposed to bring about.
Yeah, wasn't that the whole purpose of Obamacare? I mean, I think I know what the real purpose was, but they portrayed it as getting uninsured Americans insured. They haven't even come close to that, have they?
No, I mean, I'm my rough guess at this point, based on the exchange and possibly new Medicaid enrollees and those who have gotten Medicaid under the actual Obamacare expansion, you may get coverage numbers in a decline in the uninsured of maybe 3 to 4 million at this point. But you have to ask at what cost. I mean, how many people lost their insurance coverage last year? How many of those have decided to drop coverage and go uninsured? That may, if that number is significant, it can easily cancel out some of that 3 to 4 million gain. And then, the other costs, the taxes that people are now having to pay for this for this policy. The fact that the insurance on the exchange is much more expensive than what came before. The fact that people are having trouble finding exchange insurance that covers their doctors. And then you get into the whole question of what it's going to do to employers and employees. I mean, there's a new study out saying that employers, for their insurance costs, may go up over time by $5,000 per employee because of Obamacare. And, it may impact, because of the employer mandate, it may impact a lot of workers. I suspect particularly lower-income workers. I mean, has the increase that we've gotten in the number of insured really been worth that cost? And at this point, I think the costs far outweigh the benefits.
I'm talking with Dr. David Hogberg. He's in Washington, the National Center for Public Policy Analysis, and he's been following this whole issue from the very beginning. Let me point out one thing, David, and I'd like your reaction. I think it's Media Research Center came out with a number that 0.072%, less than 1%, of network coverage on ABC, CBS, and NBC, and of course MSNBC, less than 1% were given or was given to Obamacare and all the problems it was running into since the first of the year. So I'm curious about something. How is it the American people are still very much against Obamacare when the media, the big media, is not telling them these problems? Fox is, but Fox is not a big player when it comes to the total picture. How is it that people know it's a bad deal?
Well, if you got 6 million people, or somewhere between 5 and 6 million people who lost their insurance, not only are they going to know, but they're going to complain to a lot of other people, and if every one of them complains to 10 people, you're up to 60 million people who know about it. Plus, the other answer is NBC, CBS, and ABC have been losing viewers for years now, so less and less people rely on them for their news, and they rely on other outlets which probably have been doing reporting on this, as such, I think that's probably as best an explanation as I can give as to why the law remains unpopular.
It is interesting.
It's probably just to add, one of the reasons they're losing viewers is because of such of the type of coverage they do and don't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they listen. They're in the tank for Obama, and a professor at Alfred University told me last Friday that the campus had a guest speaker. He was an Israeli and an American citizen, served in the Israeli military, was an advisor to both countries on drones, and apparently had some bad things to say about relying on drones. He was talking to some media people about this, not at Alfred, but somewhere else. And he said the trouble is you people in the media are covering up for Obama, and you don't point out all these shortcomings. And he said the guy sitting right next to him was either a reporter or a columnist, I don't know which, turned his chair around and turned his back to him and would never look at him again. The media is in the tank for Obama. Have you ever asked yourself why?
Yeah, of course I've asked myself why. Whether or not that has come up with any really good explanations, is a whole other thing. I mean, one is just the press tends to be more liberal than the population at large, and they prefer liberal politicians. When this President Obama came on in 2008, 2009, I mean, he was very, very good at rhetoric, at giving speeches, at using words, at being articulate, and in ways I think journalists appreciate it. And you have to understand, in the profession of politics and journalism and so forth, there's a high premium on being articulate, and Obama was just, had an incredible talent for that. So, I think that led to, the media just having this, if you'll pardon the term, love affair with him.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take a break. When we get back, I want to see what advice you'll give to people about the next phases of Obamacare. We've only seen a very small amount of it so far, and then President Obama himself has canceled a lot of that. I think 37 changes he's made in the law himself. So we'll see what the future holds, because a lot of people have not been affected by it yet. And what will they see? We'll find that out when we get back. My guest today on the Newsmaker Show is an expert on Obamacare. He's been studying it very, very carefully. Not from a biased standpoint, just, what's it really all about? He's with the National Center for Public Policy Analysis, a think tank, if you will, in Washington. Dr. David Hogberg. He's told me to call him David, so I'm going to do that. David, as I just said a moment ago, most people have not been affected by Obamacare because this is an election year and he doesn't want anyone to know how bad it's going to be on him. So he's pulled back a lot of it, probably unconstitutionally, but he's done it nonetheless. What will be the next things that people will see about Obamacare, good or bad? What will they see?
Well, I think what you're going to start seeing come May and June is that insurers are going to release very, very high premium increases for policies on the exchange. We've already seen some hints of that in the news, and I think that is, you're going to see very large premium increases. That, I suspect, is what's going to really get the death spiral rolling, where younger people, healthier people drop out of the exchanges, and then it repeats itself. The premiums go up because the pool is older and sicker. That's what you'll see. I think you're going to see. I mean, in fact, I know it's happening now. We just haven't gotten much press attention for it. Is people who work for small employers and they have insurance through the small employer. They've been losing their plans. We had our plan dropped here at the National Center through Kaiser. Kaiser offered us a different plan, slightly more expensive, which we took. I know there's been some others out there, but so far no one in the media has actually counted up the total, but at some point I think that number is coming. And then eventually it's probably going to impact large employers in the same way. There's just a new report out saying that the increase, I think, per employee may be, due to Obamacare, may be around $5,000 in the long run.
That's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
When does that go into effect, David?
I don't know at this point. I haven't had a chance to really go through the report and dig into the details yet. I just saw it this morning, so I can't say for certain. But then, the employer mandate's eventually going to take full effect. That's going to increase the costs for employers, and I think it's going to really affect the employment, especially of lower-income workers. That's coming down the pike. There are cuts to Medicare and Medicare Advantage, and if the commercials being done by interest groups involved in that are any indication, those cuts are really just now beginning to bite, and there's probably going to be a big political fight over those coming up in the next year, 2 years or so. So there's a lot more on this law to come. I think where we're at now is best described as the end of the beginning, the end of the first open enrollment period, the end of the first sort of, how does the Obama administration react to trying to deal with something this complicated, and that is make it up as they go along, the actual law be damned. And like I said, we've probably also got to the end of the various Medicare cuts that, haven't really had a huge impact. So we're kind of at the end of the beginning, and there's a lot more to come.
Okay, now, isn't it true that Obama has postponed most of these awful things until after the 2014 elections so that he doesn't get creamed at the polls?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the employer mandates have been that has been delayed until the end of this year. It's further delayed another year for employers with the number of employees between, I think, 50 and 99. He let people basically who had lost their insurance. Many of them are allowed to keep their insurance for another 2 years on the individual market. Whether or not we'll see something similar at some point for the small group market, I don't know. But I mean, he's done that. By my count, there are at least 10 changes. I mean, there've been. You're right. There's like 37 changes overall. Some of those were done though via Congress, like repealing the what was it, not the 990 tax, but the 1099 tax, for example. But a lot of them have been done simply by fiat of the administration, for which it is very questionable. In fact, in many cases, I think it's absolutely certain that they don't have the authority under the law to do those sorts of things. So, and I suspect you're going to see a lot more of that in the next 2.5 years to come.
What advice would you give to our listeners, regardless of where they stand, small business, individual? Not too many around here work for large corporations. Well, a few of them do. What advice would you give to the individuals?
Hope and pray.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it, but the advice I would give is to try to work to get this law repealed and something better, something more free market based, replaced in its stead. That would be the advice I would give, and and that's going to be a long-term project, something that's going to take a couple of years, but it can be done, and don't despair.
Well, 6 Democrat senators from Republican areas, because they're terrified what's going to happen to their jobs, offered proposals that were mostly Republican ideas to amend Obamacare, and Harry Reid wouldn't allow it to be discussed or voted upon. I think maybe Holder and Obama have got something on Reid. I really do. But, all right, so the Republicans are no longer talking about repeal. They're talking about replace, which is kind of the same thing. But I have friends of mine who are professors who maintain, that doesn't make them brilliant either, as you well know, but they maintain that you'll never really get rid of it now. What do you think about that?
Well, no, I'm not overly convinced. I mean, I think you might have to keep some of the parts of it temporarily, like, it would probably be a bad idea to kick people off of their exchange policies and the subsidy and take away the subsidies they've gotten there. We'll have to probably keep that for a while, but eventually you could switch to a system where create a new system around that, and as such the exchange system slowly withers away. The closing of the donut hole in Medicare Part D, probably have to keep that. But I mean, that's maybe overall 10% of the bill. I mean, you can probably repeal the other remaining 90%, and and still get us to a much better system. I mean, this tinkering around the edges is a tantamount to trying to use a couple of Band-Aids to seal up the gash in the Titanic after it hit the iceberg. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with it. I think repeal is at this point very likely. Well,
depends on how many Republicans get elected this fall, and since all elections are local, we just don't know what's going to happen.
And how many of them keep their courage, too.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Dr. David Hogberg of the National Center for public policy research, and his email, and I'm sorry, his website is nationalcenter.org. If you want to read more about this. Thank you very much, Professor or Doctor.
Thank you.
He was a professor once at my alma mater, briefly, so there you go. Now, what he said, for those of you joining us late, is that the worst parts of Obamacare we haven't seen yet, but we will this year when rates take a dramatic increase. We've already seen the deductibles skyrocket. Here, where we insure our employees, we insure all of our employees totally. We pay for the whole thing. We saw the deductibles go up dramatically. The prices did not go up dramatically, but they will this year. A lot of people are losing their plans, and more will, because their employers simply will not be able to afford it. Even paying 50% of it will be the end of it. Large businesses and small businesses this year are going to start to see these gigantic jumps. And then, of course, a lot of the people who were signing up for Obamacare were placed into Medicaid. The trouble with that is about 50% of the doctors, I don't know about the hospitals, I think they have to take you, but 50% of the doctors won't take Medicaid. I don't think that's true in this area, but nationwide. So have we gotten better or have we gotten worse? Well, I'll leave it up to you. Okay, stay tuned for more news and information. AM 1480 WLEA. WLEA. WLEA.